The year is 1895, and in London, the evening trains are lighting their lamps. At Euston station, under a roof of iron and soot-darkened glass, a train is waiting that will not arrive anywhere until morning. 12 carriages, painted the deep, quiet colors of a company that takes itself seriously, standing in a row behind an engine that is already breathing. Porters move along the platform with trunks on their shoulders. A lampman walks the carriage roofs, dropping lit oil lamps into their sockets, one soft glow after another, until the whole train is strung with small warm moons. This is the night express to Scotland. It will run 400 miles while its passengers are asleep through the fog of the Midlands, over the high bare backs of the northern fells, across the border in the blackest hour of the night, and down at last into a Highland dawn. Nobody on board needs to stay awake for any of it. That is the entire point of this train. An army of men, signalmen in their lonely lamplit boxes, drivers leaning into the weather, postal clerks sorting letters at 60 miles an hour, attendants padding down carpeted corridors in soft shoes, will all be awake tonight, precisely so that the people behind the little oil lamps do not have to be. This is history for sleep. Tonight you have a berth on this train, a narrow, warm, well-made bed that moves. We will walk the platform before departure. We will meet the men on the footplate and the clerks in the mail van. We will listen to the rhythm the rails make, which is the oldest lullaby the industrial world ever produced. Nothing frightening will happen. The train is expected. The line is clear. Every signal between here and Scotland is being watched by someone whose whole job tonight is to see you safely through the dark. If you are already lying down, then you are already doing everything this journey requires of you. Let the guard worry about the time. Let the fireman worry about the fire. Settle into your pillow the way a carriage settles onto its springs, and let us begin at the station, an hour before departure, when the lamps are just going up. Every great railway station in Victorian London is a cathedral built by accountants, and Euston is the oldest of them all. You come in from the street through a portico of enormous stone columns, the famous Doric arch, black with 50 years of coal smoke, built in the 1830s, when the railway to the north was the newest thing in the world. Beyond it, the Great Hall, a room so tall that the gas lamps on its walls light only the lower half, and the ceiling above them dissolves into a warm brown dusk of its own. The floor is stone, and it carries sound the way water carries light. 1,000 footsteps a minute, and yet no single footstep loud. A murmur, a rustle, the distant ring of a handbell. Stations at evening have a particular sound, and it is softer than you would think. The day's traffic is nearly done. The last of the suburban trains have taken the clerks home to their suppers. What remains now is the night traffic, the serious traffic, the railwaymen would tell you. Fish from Aberdeen, and mail for everywhere, and newspapers that will be on Scottish breakfast tables by 8. And the sleepers, the long-distance passengers who cross the country lying down. You can tell the night passengers by their luggage and their unhurried walk. A man in a long travelling coat consults the departure board, where a clerk on a ladder is setting the white letters by hand. The Night Express, Glasgow, Perth, the North. A family moves toward the platform gate in a small procession, a sleeping child carried high on a father's shoulder like a parcel too precious for the van. 2 commercial travellers compare order books by a pillar. A lady in grey gives her trunk to a porter and follows it with the calm of someone who has done this 30 times. The gaslight does something generous to all of them. It rounds the edges. It puts a small flame in every eye and turns every face half gold. Under gaslight, at 7 in the evening, in the largest city on earth, everyone looks slightly like a painting of themselves. At the platform gate, a ticket inspector stands in a uniform with polished buttons, clipping each ticket with a soft double click. murmuring the same words over and over like a verger at a church door. "Right down the platform, sir. Third carriage for Perth. The attendant will show you your berth." The words are a formula, worn smooth by repetition, and like all worn smooth things, they are comfortable to hold. And beyond the gate, down the long stone platform, the train itself is waiting, which deserves, and will now get, a chapter of its own. A train like this one is not so much built as gathered. All afternoon in the carriage sidings north of the station, shunting engines have been easing vehicles together. A clunk, a pause, a gentle iron handshake of buffers assembling the night express one piece at a time, the way a careful host lays a long table. At the head, nearest the engine, the vans, luggage, parcels, fish. Then the travelling post office, which we shall visit properly after midnight, its sides painted with the royal cipher and fitted with nets and arms, whose purpose for now we shall leave folded shut. Then the passenger carriages, and among them the reason this train matters to us tonight, the sleeping cars. A Victorian sleeping car is a remarkable object, and the men who built it knew it. From outside it looks like any other carriage, only longer and somehow more discreet. Its windows curtained, its paintwork deep and glossy as a chestnut. Inside, it is a corridor of little rooms. Each berth is a cabin in miniature, a bed the width of generosity and no wider, made up with sheets ironed flat as paper, a pillow in a starched slip, and a thick railway blanket with the company's initials woven into the wool. There is a shelf for a watch, a net for a hat, a small mirror, a carafe of water with the glass upturned over its neck like a little hat of its own. There is a lamp with a shade you can dim by turning a brass ring, and this single detail, the dimmable lamp, tells you everything about what this carriage is for. The builders of this vehicle thought hard about sleep. They upholstered the walls, they put felt between the panels, they set the bed along the line of travel so that the motion of the train rocks the sleeper lengthwise, head to foot, the direction a cradle rocks. The first sleeping carriages had run on this very line 20 years earlier, in the 1870s, and they had been a sensation, a bed on a train, written up in the illustrated papers like a conjuring trick. By tonight, in '95, they are simply how one goes north if one can afford it. Progress moves like that on the railway. Astonishment, then habit, then a kind of affection. Along the platform, the lampman is finishing his roof walk. In each carriage roof is a socket, and into each socket he lowers a burning oil lamp in its own little glass world, then closes the lid over it. From inside, passengers see only a warm circle of light appear in the ceiling, as if the carriage had opened an eye. Gas is coming to carriage lighting, and electricity is being talked about in the engineering papers. But on this train tonight, it is oil and wick, the same flame more or less that has lit human bedtimes for 4,000 years, now travelling at 60 miles an hour. At the very rear, the guard's van, where the guard, the captain of this vessel, keeps his lamps, his flags, his detonators for fog, his ledger, and his enormous silver watch. He walks the length of the train now, checking each door with a push of his flat hand. His boots on the platform stone are the metronome of the last quarter hour before departure. Before the train departs, spare one chapter for the road itself, because the 400 miles you are about to cross in bed were made, every yard of them, by hand. The navvies built this line. The word is short for navigators, inherited from the canal diggers before them. And in the 1830s and 40s, they came in their tens of thousands, English, Irish, Scots, men from every county with strong backs and no better offer, and they dug the London and Northwestern main line out of the body of England with picks, shovels, barrows and black powder. No machines to speak of. A good navvy shifted 20 tons of earth in a day, day after day, and was proud of it, and was paid for it better than farm work ever paid, and earned every penny twice over. They lived alongside the works in turf and timber camp towns that walked north with the railhead shanties, canteens, a chapel tent, a fight on Saturdays, a preacher on Sundays, and respectable England viewed them with alarm and wrote pamphlets about them. And meanwhile they built respectable England its future, embankment by embankment. The land remembers them tonight, if you know how to read it. Every cutting the train runs through those long trenches where the lamplight slides along walls of grassed-over earth, was barrowed out a wheelbarrow at a time, men running planks up the slopes behind loaded barrows, a trade with its own name, making the running. Every embankment that carries you level over a valley floor is the same earth, carried and tipped and shaped. The tunnels were driven from vertical shafts sunk in the fields above, gangs working toward each other in candlelight through the dark of the earth, meeting in the middle with an error on the great works of inches. Kilsby Tunnel, which you will pass through asleep tonight, flooded during its building and was pumped dry by engines working night and day for months, and very nearly broke its engineer's spirit, and stands tonight as dry and black and serviceable as the day it opened, with your train due through it at line speed. The navvies are old men now. Those that are living the line is 60 years built, and their camp towns are ploughed fields again, leaving scarcely a trace. But every beat of the rail joints tonight passes over their work, and will pass over it for as long as trains run this road. The engine has its crew and the train its guard, but under everything, mile on mile in the dark, is that vanished army with its barrows, the first shift of the great relay, so long finished that everyone has forgotten they were ever on duty. And the road they made carries you all the same. Your ticket is a small stiff rectangle, and it has cost you real money, the sleeping berth supplement on top of the first-class fare, altogether something like a working man's weekly wage. It is not a cheap bed. It is, however, possibly the best attended bed in the British Empire, for reasons you will spend the rest of this night discovering. The sleeping car attendant meets you at the carriage door. He is a man of perhaps 50, in a uniform tailored close, with the manner of a butler who has chosen, out of professional curiosity, to spend his life in motion. He has seen every kind of passenger there is, the nervous first-timers who ask whether the train stops if they pull the cord, the old hands who are asleep before Willesden, the insomniac colonels, the honeymooners, the widow who travels north every October and always asks for berth number 4. He carries the passenger list on a clip, and he has already read it the way a good host reads a guest list. He shows you down the corridor, carpeted, lamplit, exactly wide enough for one person and one act of politeness when two people meet, and opens the door of your berth. He points out the bell that summons him, the ring that dims the lamp, the catch that holds the window against the night air. He asks at what hour you would like tea in the morning, and whether you take the blanket over or folded at the foot. These are, if you think about it, the questions of a good innkeeper anywhere in the last 1,000 years. The inn has simply learnt to move. He will be awake all night. This is worth saying plainly because it is the first appearance of the great theme of this journey. The attendant does not have a berth. He has a folding seat at the end of the corridor, a lamp, a kettle on a spirit stove, and a list of stations. He sleeps tomorrow, in the daytime, in lodgings the company keeps for the purpose. Tonight he pads up and down the strip of carpet on soft-soled shoes, listening to the carriage the way a nurse listens to a ward, and every passenger behind every door sleeps a little better for not quite hearing him. You put your boots outside the door, as the custom is. They will be cleaned and returned by morning, glossy as beetles, by a boy at Crewe, whose entire nightly occupation is the boots of sleeping strangers. You wind your watch. You hang your coat on the hook that is exactly where your hand expects a hook to be. Outside on the platform, a bell rings once, and along the train doors begin to close, not slammed this late in the evening, but pressed shut, carefully, one after another, like a long row of people being tucked in. At 9 o'clock exactly, and on this railway, Exactly means exactly. The guard looks at his watch, looks down the platform, and raises his green lamp. From the engine far ahead comes an answering note, one short cry of the whistle, not loud, almost conversational. The driver eases the regulator open, and the train does the thing that every child on every platform has always loved to watch. It leans into its work. There is no jerk if the driver knows his trade, and this driver has been 30 years learning it. There is only a long gathering intention. The platform lamps begin to slide. The faces on the platform, the seers off, the porters, the inspector with his clipper glide backward like figures on a slow carousel, and the great dark roof of Euston passes overhead one girder at a time, and then the train puts its face into the open night. The first mile out of Euston is a climb through a canyon of brick, and the engine speaks in deep, separated syllables. Ha, ha, ha. Each beat of the exhaust, a shovel blow of effort. London stands close on either side. The backs of houses, lit windows in rows, a woman drawing a curtain, a man smoking in a doorway, 10,000 small domestic evenings stacked 3 stories high, each one visible for half a second and then gone. There is no way of seeing a city more tenderly than from a departing night train. Every lit window is somebody's whole evening, and you pass them like a reader turning pages. Then the syllables run together, the beat becomes a rhythm, the rhythm becomes that rocking 4-count the rails make T-tum, 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 and the suburbs begin to thin. Gaslight gives way to lamplight, lamplight to the dark shapes of trees. In your berth you feel the change as much as hear it. The train has found its stride, the long swinging gait it will hold for hundreds of miles, and the carriage sways on its springs with the patience of a ship in a mild sea. This rhythm deserves a moment of respect because it is the engine of this entire experience. The rails of this line are laid in lengths, and where length meets length, there is a joint, and the wheels count the joints as they pass. 2 beats for the leading wheels, 2 for the trailing. T-tum, T-tum. It is arithmetic, nothing more, but it is arithmetic at the exact tempo of a resting human heart, repeated without malice for hour after hour, and it has rocked more people to sleep than perhaps any other sound the 19th century makes. Doctors of the period write about it. Nurses recommend train journeys for the sleepless. The night express is, among its other trades, the largest cradle in the country. Somewhere behind you in the train, the attendant turns down the first corridor lamp. Ahead, the engine settles to its long work. Watford, Tring, the Chiltern chalk cuttings pale in the dark. The names will pass whether you learn them or not. That too is a luxury, a journey where every single name can safely be somebody else's business. 400 yards ahead of your pillow, in the open air, 2 men are standing in the weather on a shaking steel floor, and it is worth going forward in the way that only a story can go forward, to spend a while with them. The footplate of the engine is a room with one wall missing. On 3 sides, iron and gauges and the great warm backhead of the boiler. On the 4th side, the night itself, arriving at 60 miles an hour. The driver stands to the left, one hand resting on the regulator, the way a rider's hand rests on a rein, not gripping, listening. He is 51 years old. He started on this railway as an engine cleaner at 14, spent years as a fireman, years more on goods engines and slow locals, and has now what is called top link, the best work, the night expresses, the trust of the timetable. He knows this road, the railwayman's word for the line, the way you know the stairs of your own house in the dark. He knows where the track dips near the river and where the fog pools past the junction. He carries the next 100 miles in his body. To the right, the fireman, 28, in a sweat-darkened shirt with his sleeves rolled, working with a long-handled shovel in a rhythm as regular as bell ringing. Swing, cut into the coal of the tender, turn, and lay the charge into the firebox door that his mate holds open with a chain not dumped anyhow but placed, an even bed here, a thicker patch there under the door where the fire pulls thin. Little and often is the rule. The fire is a living thing, 8 feet long, white gold at its heart, and it must be fed like something living. When the door swings open, the glare lights both men amber from below and flings their shadows up onto the steam overhead. When it clangs shut, the night rushes back, and there are only the gauge lamps, 2 small yellow eyes and the red glow seeping around the door's edge. They speak very little, and when they do it is in half sentences, because the wind takes the rest, and because after 4 years together the half is enough. Distant signal. Got her. She's steaming well. Aye. Between words, each man is a system of small attentions, the driver's eye moving from the track to the pressure gauge to the water glass and back to the track. The fireman glancing at the fire's colour, a pale straw glare means all is well, orange means feed me, and at the injector that sings water into the boiler, and always ahead the lights. The night line is written in lamps, green for clear on this railway, red for stop, and each signal steps out of the dark exactly where the driver's memory said it would be, is read and is released. He does not relax between signals. A tension like his is not tension. It is a settled, wide-open steadiness, the same state a helmsman keeps, and it can be held for hours by a man who has built his life into the shape of it. It is a hard office, the footplate and the men who hold it know its weight, and mostly love it anyway. Behind them, stretching back into the dark, 400 tons of train and several hundred sleeping people ride on their steadiness. They do not think of it in those terms. You cannot shovel coal to a sentiment, but it is true all the same, and on the whole line tonight there is no warmer place and no more watchful one than this shaking iron room with one wall made of night. At the opposite end of the train from the footplate, 400 yards of sleeping passengers away, rides the other half of the train's command, the guard in his van, and his kingdom deserves a visit before the night gets deep. The brake van is part office, part chapel, part lighthouse. Along one wall, a desk with a sloping lid, where the guard's journal lies open under a hanging lamp, for everything on this railway is written down, and the guard is its recording angel. Time past each point to the quarter minute, weather, load, every incident, however small. A door found unlatched at Crewe, a parcel overcarried, fog patches south of Preston. Decades from now, these journals will sleep in company archives, and men who wish to know exactly what the night of the 14th of March 1895 was like on the down road will be able to read it in this round, careful hand. Around the desk, the tools of his office, racks of lamps, hand lamps with red, green and white glasses, spares for the tail, a cupboard of detonators for fog and emergency, dated and rotated like medicine, flags rolled in their canvas sleeves. The vacuum brake gauge trembling on the wall, by which he can feel the state of the whole train's brakes from his van, and the great brass handle of his own brake, with which, if ever the need arose, he could bring the express to rest from the rear. A stove, a kettle, a tin of tea, a bench worn to the shape of 40 years of guards. And above the desk, the most important small light on the whole train, the repeating lamp of the tail. The tail lamp, that modest red eye on the last vehicle, is, you will remember, what every signalman along 400 miles must see to know the train is whole. The guard serves that lamp the way a keeper serves a lighthouse, trims it before departure, checks it at every stop, carries a lit spare against its failure. Between stops he makes his rounds through the corridors, hands clasped behind him, feeling the ride through his boot soles, a flat spot on a wheel, a rough patch of road, the brake's health reading the train's body the way the driver reads the line ahead. The guard is, by rule and by temperament, the train's final authority. The driver commands the engine, the guard commands the train. It starts on his signal and on no one else's. In his journal, in his measured walk, in the lit spare lamp waiting in its bracket, you can read the whole Victorian railway creed, that safety is not a mood, but a set of habits, kept identically on the 10,000th night as on the first. Now and then, through the window of your berth, a lit box on legs goes by a little glass room raised above the track on a brick or timber base, glowing like a lantern on a shelf. If you never learned what those were, you could ride this line for years and think them watchmen's huts. They are, in fact, the reason the night express can exist at all, and each one holds exactly one man. And that man is one link in a chain of wakefulness 400 miles long. The problem the signal box solves is beautifully simple to state. Two trains must never be in the same place at the same time. The solution, refined across the century into the block system, is that the line is cut into sections, blocks, and only one train may hold a block at once, and the keeper of each block is the signalman in his box. Step inside one, say a country box somewhere in the Midlands, an hour after our train has left London. It is a single room, and it is kept like a ship's bridge. A row of tall steel levers rises from the floor, each polished where 40 years of hands have pulled it, each connected by rods and wires to a signal arm or a set of switch points somewhere out in the dark. A stove ticks in the corner. A kettle sits on the stove. On the shelf, the block instruments, brass and mahogany dials linked by telegraph to the boxes on either side, and a bell that speaks in codes. The signalman here is alone, and will be alone until 6 in the morning, and around him the countryside for miles lies black and asleep. Then the bell gives its warning tinkle, and then a rhythm of beats, 4, pause, then more, and the night's work arrives. 4 beats, and the rest of the code. An express passenger train is offered from the box to the south. He answers on his own bell, sets his instrument to line clear, and pulls his levers 1, 2, 3. The clean chunk of steel finding its slot, and half a mile away, unseen, a signal arm drops, and its lamp turns green. Then he stands at his window with a hand on the sill, and waits. What he is waiting for is us. Far off, a low sound like weather. Then the rails themselves begin to sing, a thin silver whisper running ahead of the train. Then the headlamps, then the roar and the lit windows streaming past beneath him. He can see the corridors, the dimmed lamps, a single reading light burning in one berth, and then the red tail lamp, which he must see, for the tail lamp proves the train is whole. He watches it shrink up the line. He sends train out of section to the box behind, offers the express to the box ahead, writes the times in his register in a round, careful hand, and puts the kettle back on. That is the whole ceremony, and it repeats through the night, box after box after box, from London to the border and beyond. Nobody sees the whole chain. Each man holds only his own link, his section, his levers, his bells, and trusts the man on either side. Your train is being passed north tonight, from hand to hand to hand, like a candle carried carefully down a long dark corridor, and it will not once be dropped, while the signalmen keep their vigil outside. At the middle of the train, a warmer institution is closing down for the night. The dining car is finishing its last service. Dining cars are newer than sleeping cars, a novelty of the 1880s, still faintly glamorous in '95, and this one is a small marvel of compression. A full kitchen the size of a large wardrobe, coal range and copper pans, and a cook who has learned to plate a dinner with his elbows tucked in, swaying like a sailor. The dining room itself seats 24 under a clerestory roof, at tables with white cloths, heavy silver, and a little shaded lamp apiece. The soup arrives full to the brim and does not spill. Waiters on a moving floor develop a gait, half glide and half roll, that lets them pour coffee at speed through a set of facing points without disgracing themselves. The last sitting tonight was soup, fish, a roast, a pudding and cheese, eaten by a dozen passengers to the rhythm of the rails, the wine trembling in fine rings in the glasses, the countryside invisible beyond black windows, so that the little dining room seemed, as it always does at night, like a lit raft moving through nothing. There is no conversation quite like night train dinner conversation. Strangers, comfortably fed, in motion, with nowhere to be. It loosens into anecdote and dies away contentedly, like a fire settling. Now it is past 10, and the raft is being put to bed. The waiters strip and fold the cloths. The silver goes into its felt-lined drawers, each fork in its slot, because loose silver on a night train would chatter like a tinker's cart. The cook rakes his range down, banks what fire must be kept, and wipes his counters to a dull shine. Glasses are racked upside down in wooden holes made to grip them. 1 lamp in 3 is left burning. The head attendant walks the little room, straightens a chair, pockets a forgotten pair of spectacles for the lost property book, and stands a moment at the end door, swaying, looking back down his darkened kingdom with the satisfaction of a man whose accounts have come out even. In the kitchen, the kettle stays warm on the banked range. Railwaymen run on tea the way engines run on coal, and through the night the dining car will quietly serve its second secret clientele. The guard on his rounds, the attendant from the sleepers, a relieving postal clerk, each stopping in the half-dark for a mug, a word, a leaning silence before going back along the swaying corridors to their separate watches. Not everyone on the night express is asleep, and the train, wise in its generation, has made provision for the wakeful. Forward of the sleeping cars there are ordinary carriages, first and third class, their seats occupied by travellers who could not run to a berth, or would not. And by 11 o'clock, these have become a gallery of the human ways of passing a night upright. In one compartment, 4 commercial travellers have their coats off and a travelling rug spread across their knees for a card table. They play a quiet, endless game for matchsticks by the light of the roof lamp, with the practiced economy of men who do this every week and will never once raise their voices. In the next, a soldier going home on furlough sleeps sitting bolt upright with his kit at his feet, a skill the army teaches better than any sleeping car. A student ministers to a pile of books with a pencil. A mother has built a nest of shawls in a corner for 2 children who sleep across her lap in a tangle, while she watches the dark go by over their heads with the calm, inexhaustible wakefulness of mothers on night journeys everywhere. And there is the smoking compartment, that great Victorian institution, where 3 strangers with pipes and 1 with a cigar have fallen into the low, unhurried talk of men who will never meet again, and are therefore entirely at ease. The talk goes where night train talk always goes. Begun at railways, every man in Britain has a view on railways, drifted through politics at half strength, and settled as the miles accumulate into stories. The cigar man has been to America and describes the sleeping cars there, vast affairs with curtained shelves named for their maker, Pullman. The company weighs this transatlantic marvel and concludes patriotically and through smoke that a proper little cabin with a door is worth any amount of velvet shelving. Someone produces sandwiches, someone's flask goes round. The lamp above them has been shaded down to half, and the smoke hangs in its light in slow galaxies, remaking itself at every sway of the carriage. By 1 o'clock even these will have surrendered, cards boxed, pipes out, chins on chests, the whole gallery nodding in their corners like a garden going over, and the wakefulness of the train will have narrowed to its professionals, the men who are paid for it and are worth every shilling. Toward 11 o'clock, if you happen to be standing in a certain field beside the line, and no one is, the field belongs to sleeping cattle, you would see the express go by with 1 carriage lit brighter than all the rest. Behind its frosted windows, shapes move with unusual energy for the hour. That carriage is the travelling post office, and it is the hardest working room on the train. Inside, it is a post office in every serious sense, a long sorting room on wheels, walled floor to ceiling with pigeonholes, lit by rows of oil lamps with white enamel shades that throw a bright, businesslike light, quite unlike the amber hush of the sleeping cars. 5 clerks stand at the racks in aprons, and they are sorting the night mail, tens of thousands of letters, tonight and every night, each letter read at a glance and flicked into its hole with a wrist snap perfected over years. Aberdeen, Inverness, Perth. A good sorter places better than 30 letters a minute and can do it, as the saying in the service goes, in his sleep. The travelling post office runs on strong tea, and the particular pride of men who know their work is a national institution. The letters posted this evening in London, the love letters and the bills, the birthday wishes, the bad news and the good, will be on Scottish doormats at breakfast, and these 5 swaying men are the reason. And this carriage does something more remarkable still. It takes on and sets down mail without stopping. Here is how, and it is one of the great mechanical ballets of the Victorian age. At certain points along the line, a line-side apparatus stands waiting, a post with a leather pouch hung on an arm, containing the mail of the district. As the express approaches, a clerk in the carriage swings out a strong rope net. At full speed, no slowing, not by 1 mile per hour, the net sweeps the pouch off its arm with a bang like a single drum beat, and the pouch tumbles into the carriage, is unbuckled, and its letters join the river of sorting. In the same instant, the carriage's own arms swing out, holding pouches for that district, and drop them into a line-side net as the train passes. Exchange complete. The whole transaction takes half a second. Out in the dark field, the local postman retrieves his pouch, hangs tomorrow's on the arm, and walks home. The express is already a red lamp shrinking up the valley. The passengers sleep through every exchange. The drumbeat is brief and muffled by the length of the train, and there is something quietly wonderful about that arrangement. The mail, that most personal freight, is racing through the night at speed, being caught and thrown by ropes and iron in split-second choreography, and the people it is racing for lie dreaming 2 carriages away, entirely unaware. If you wanted a single image for how the 19th century organized its miracles, you could do worse. The letters flying, the sorters swaying at their racks, the lamps burning bright in one carriage of a darkened train. An engine drinks. That is its nature. Coal is its food, but water is its life, and an express engine at speed turns thousands of gallons of water into steam in an hour. No tender could carry enough for 400 miles, and a night express does not care to stop and queue at a water crane like a suburban tank engine. So the engineers of this line built one of the simplest and most satisfying devices on the whole railway, the water trough. Between the rails, on certain dead-level stretches of line, lies a shallow steel trough, 1/3 of a mile long, kept brimming by a line-side pump house. As the express approaches, the fireman turns a wheel in the cab, and beneath the tender a steel scoop lowers until its lip just kisses the surface. What happens next is pure arithmetic joyfully applied. At 60 miles an hour, the water has no choice. It is forced up the scoop's throat and thunders into the tender tank, 2,000 gallons in the time it takes to read this sentence, while a white wing of spray flies out on either side of the train, ghostly in the darkness, drenching the unwary and delighting the engine men, who are past being drenched by anything. In the cab there is a gauge, and the fireman watches it climb half full, 3/4, and spins the wheel to raise the scoop just before the tank brims, because an overfilled tender at speed sends a sheet of water back along the carriage roofs, and the company receives letters about it. The whole operation lasts 20 seconds. No stop, no queue, no delay. The train has taken a drink at full gallop, like a swallow drinking from a pond on the wing. In your berth, the trough passes as the faintest change in the train's sound, a hiss beneath the rhythm, a half-felt shiver, gone before you could name it. File it, if you half hear it tonight, under the growing list of things being done on your behalf that you will never need to understand. Somewhere back there, in the dark, the engine has been watered, and the men are wiping spray from the cab rails, and the pump house by the trough is already refilling it for the express that follows an hour behind. Midnight, and the train runs through the heart of England with its lamps turned low. Come back now from the bright mail carriage and the wet wind of the footplate, back through the swaying vestibules with their concertina walls, into the hush of the sleeping cars, and it is a hush of a very particular quality. The corridor lamps are dimmed to a glow the color of weak tea. The carpet swallows footsteps. Behind the row of polished doors, the passengers of the night express are doing the thing the whole apparatus exists for. Nothing at all. The attendant sits at his post at the corridor's end, in the small pool of his own lamp, with the passenger list on his knee and a mug of dining car tea cooling by his elbow. Listen with him for a moment, because his trade is listening. The rails keep their 4 count. The carriage timbers creak in long, slow phrases, like a house settling, over and over, forever. A window blind taps twice against its frame and stops. From berth 7, a gentleman's snore, steady and inoffensive, the sound of a man profoundly off duty. From 5, the whisper of a page turning the old lady who boards at Euston every autumn, who reads until rugby and never rings her bell. From 11, silence of the deepest kind, the honeymooners, asleep holding hands across the gap between berths, or so the attendant would gently bet, having seen 20 years of honeymooners. He rises on the half hour and walks the corridor, soft-shoed, not because anything requires it, but because rounds are rounds. He touches each door handle as he passes, not turning it, just confirming the latch. He eases a rattling blind. He turns the lamp outside the washroom down one further ring. At the vestibule, he pauses to look out at England going by. A farmhouse dark among its barns, a canal holding the half-moon flat on its black water, a level crossing keeper's cottage with one lit window, the keeper awake too, of course. Add him to tonight's long roster of the watchful. There is a case to be made, the attendant has privately made it, on many such nights, that a sleeping train is one of the safest feeling places human beings have ever contrived. Consider the ingredients. You are lying down, warm, gently rocked. You are surrounded by others doing the same, close but unseen, their presence a comfort without a cost. You are in expert hands and excused from all decisions. And you are moving, which means every minute quietly delivers you closer to where you meant to be, so that even your idleness is productive. A bed that travels, sleep that arrives somewhere. Small wonder that many passengers of this era say they sleep better on the night express than at home. At home, after all, nobody is watching the signals for you. The attendant returns to his seat, notes the time 12:40, all quiet, and lets the 4 count of the rails carry the carriage on into the small hours toward the great junction at Crewe, where the night has a busier face. Every railway in the world has a place like Crewe, but Crewe was first, and Crewe is the pattern. It is a town the railway invented bare fields 60 years ago, now a junction where 6 lines meet, with works and sheds and sidings spread across the dark like a lit city of iron, and it never closes. By day it is merely busy. At 1 in the morning it is something better, a cathedral of lamplit purpose in the middle of sleeping farmland. Our express slides in under the long station roof at 7 minutes past 1 and stops the first stop since London. The silence when the rhythm ceases is enormous. In your berth you may half surface into it, register lamplight through the blind, voices pitched considerately low, and that is exactly as it should be. Float there and let the stop happen around you, because a great deal is happening, all of it in a hurry that has learned manners. The engine that brought you from Euston is being uncoupled. She has run her stage near 200 miles, and her fire is dirty and her tender low. A fresh engine, cold, watered and oiled, backs down onto the train with a touch soft as a handshake, coupled on by men with hand lamps whose fingers know the shackles blind. The first engine hisses away to the sheds, where a night crew will drop her fire, wash her boiler, and put her to bed on a siding under the coaling stage. Along the train, meanwhile, walks a man with a long-handled hammer, and he is performing one of the railway's oldest sacraments, wheel tapping. Each wheel gets a light ringing blow, ting, 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 down the length of the train, and he listens. A sound wheel rings true, a clear note. A cracked wheel answers dull and is condemned on the spot. The tapper's ear is the whole examination, trained past argument by 10,000 nights of this. If you hear it through your half-sleep ting, 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 walking past your pillow at ankle height, know that it is the sound of your carriage being pronounced healthy, wheel by wheel by wheel. Other footsteps, other errands. The boot boy collecting and returning. A churn of fresh milk swung into the dining car for the morning teas. Mail pouches for the post office carriage. The new relief guard exchanging the ledger and the word with the old right away, all stations running 2 minutes early, quiet night. The columns of the station lamps stand in their own light. Somewhere off in the works even now, a steam hammer thumps twice softly, like the town talking in its sleep. 8 minutes and it is done. Doors pressed shut, a green lamp swung, and the new engine takes up the load so gently that the start is not a jolt, but a suggestion. The lamplit roof slides away. The points clatter their brief, bright sentence beneath you, and the express is out again into the broad dark, running north, with everything about her renewed. Fresh fire, fresh water, fresh eyes on the road ahead. Between the stops there are the stations that are not stops, and passing one at full speed in the small hours is an experience all its own, a whole lit world delivered and taken away in 4 seconds. It approaches as a glow on the underside of the sky, then the distant signals green, then the home signals green. The signalman here has had us offered and accepted these 10 minutes, and his road is set, and then the platform ramps rise and the lamps begin. Gas globes on iron columns, evenly spaced, each one throwing its circle on the stone, coming at the train faster and faster until they merge into a single drawn-out ribbon of light. The station roars, there is no other word. The sound of the train comes back off the canopy all at once, and in that roaring flash, the whole nocturne prints itself on the eye. A porter frozen mid-stride with a barrow of mail bags, the bookstall shuttered under its painted signs, a cat sitting upright on the scales by the lamp room, fire-eyed, unblinking, watching the express exactly as its ancestors watched everything. 2 passengers for the slow train standing well back with their collars up. The station master's window with its geraniums lit from within, and in the signal box at the platform's end, the man himself at his window, one hand lifted, not a wave exactly, the railway salute, economical as everything else in the profession, and the driver's whistle answers, one short note flung backward and instantly far behind. Then the ribbon of lamps ends, the roar shuts off like a door, and the dark and the 4 count resume as if nothing had happened at all. Something had, though. In the box, the signalman is already at his instruments, ringing the beats that send us on to his neighbour and writing his times in the register. On the platform, the porter's barrow resumes its journey to the lamp room. The cat completes its thought. The station goes back to its slow night business of waiting for the trains that do stop. The milk train presently, the newspaper train before dawn, and to being what country stations at night have always quietly been, a lit room at the edge of the dark, keeping the time of a sleeping district, faithful whether anyone is watching or not. Your train passes a dozen such stations tonight, and every one of them knows you are coming before you arrive and reports you safely gone after you leave. Envy, if you like, the passengers of some future age their speed, but they will cross their countries in sealed brightness, seeing nothing, and you have the lamplit cat and the geraniums and the lifted hand at the box window, each for 4 seconds, each perfect. The relief guard who joined us at Crewe is a man with a story, and since the passengers are asleep and the corridor is quiet, he tells it to the attendant over tea in the darkened dining car in the low voice of a man who has told it well many times. It happened just this summer, the summer of '95, and the railway world is still talking about it. They call it the race to the north. 2 great routes run from London to Scotland, the West Coast Road, which is ours tonight, and the East Coast Road by way of York and Newcastle. For years each has claimed the faster night service to Aberdeen, and this August the claiming stopped being polite. It began with a quickened timetable here, an answering cut there 5 minutes, then 10, and then for a few extraordinary weeks in high summer, the gloves came off entirely. Schedules were abandoned. The night expresses on both roads simply ran as fast as their companies dared. Engines specially chosen, crews hand-picked, station stops drilled down to the half-minute, the whole length of both routes cleared and watching. The guard was on one of the racing trains, and what he remembers is the strangeness of the speed. Stations that were always a stop went past as a single shout of lamplight. The engine changes were like magic tricks, old engine off, new engine on, away in the time it takes to fill a teapot. Up the long banks the engines were driven, as engines are rarely driven, and down the far sides they flew, 80 miles an hour and better in the summer dark, the whole train humming like a plucked string. Passengers, because the racing trains carried ordinary paying passengers. That was the wonderful absurdity of it. Passengers were woken at Aberdeen at astonishing hours and set down blinking on the platform, hours early, mildly outraged, secretly thrilled, with nowhere to go until breakfast. One night that August, the West Coast ran the 540 miles from London to Aberdeen in 512 minutes, an average, counting every stop, of well over 60 miles an hour, behind small Victorian engines with 2 men and a shovel. Records traded hands night by night. The newspapers kept scoreboards as if it were cricket. And then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The companies looked at each other, counted the cost of coal and nerves, muttered publicly about dignity and safety, and restored the timetables. Tonight our express runs to its schedule, sedate and sure, and will not race anyone. But the men remember. The driver ahead of us tonight had a racing turn that August, and somewhere in his settled, watchful stillness at the regulator, there is a night when he was given his head and let the engine out to her full stride under the stars, and knows exactly what she has in her, and is content on your behalf not to use it. The guard finishes his tea and rinses the mug. Speed is a fine thing, he says, putting his watch away, but the timetable is finer, and he goes back down the swaying corridor to his van, past the doors of sleepers who will never know they are being carried tonight by veterans of the fastest trains the world has yet seen. Somewhere past Preston, in the flat country before the hills, the express runs into fog, the first thin outriders of it, then the true bank, and the world beyond the windows goes soft and white dark, like sleep made visible. Fog is the railway's oldest adversary, because the railway runs on sight. A signal lamp that can be seen a mile away on a clear night may, in thick fog, show at 50 yards or not at all. And so the railway long ago worked out its answer, and the answer, this being the Victorian railway, is not to stop and not to guess, but to add more men and more method. The method is a small, loud, brilliant invention called the detonator, a flat disc the size of a pocket watch, packed with a percussion charge and fitted with soft lead straps that clip it to the top of the rail. A wheel passing over it sets it off, a single sharp bang, easily heard on the footplate over every other sound. It does no harm to wheel or rail. It is simply a signal you cannot fail to notice, a signal for the ears when the eyes are beaten, and with the detonator comes the fogman. When fog settles on a district, the call goes out: platelayers, off-duty men, pensioners who live along the line, and each takes a station at the foot of a signal post, with a hand lamp, a supply of detonators, and a hut the size of a sentry box if he is lucky. A brazier if he is luckier still. His duty is elegantly simple. He watches the signal arm above him, which he can see even when the driver cannot. If the signal shows clear, he stands easy and lets the trains go by. The moment it shows danger, he clips detonators to the rail, and now any train that approaches gets the bang beneath the wheels. And the driver, who heard it through 50 years of instinct, shuts steam and brings her under control long before the invisible red lamp would have told him anything. So the express feels its way north through the white hours in perfect safety, handed not just from signal box to signal box now, but from fogman to fogman, men standing at the roots of the signals like lamplit statues, coat collars up, braziers hissing where the fog drips off the gantries, each one bored, cold, entirely reliable, and paid a few shillings for a night of standing still so that several hundred strangers may keep moving. On the footplate, the driver runs steady with his hand resting near the brake, reading the fog's thickness by the halo of his own lamps. Twice, far off, a detonator bangs on some other line, muffled by the white some goods train being checked at a junction, and the sound carries oddly, softened, like a door closed in another part of a large house. In your berth, none of this reaches you at all, unless perhaps as the vaguest slowing of the rhythm, a gentling the train picking its way. The fog will thin as the line begins to climb. It always does. Ahead, the hills are waiting above the weather, and the hardest, highest, loneliest miles of the night, which are also, in their stern way, the most beautiful. Near the big junctions, the line runs past the engine sheds, and if the passing station was a 4-second nocturne, the shed, as the express goes by, is a vision from an older, deeper kind of story, a round temple full of sleeping iron and small moving fires. The shed, the men say shed whether it holds 4 engines or 40, is where locomotives live when they are not working, a great roundhouse or a long gabled hall, thick with the incense of the trade, coal smoke and hot oil and steam and wet ash, all compounded into a single smell that a railwayman can identify blindfold and will remember if he lives to 90 as the smell of his life. At 2 in the morning, the shed is at its strange still busiest. Engines stand in ranks in the gloom, some dead cold and waiting for the fitters, some in light steam for the morning, sighing at their safety valves in their sleep, ticking as they cool, dripping into their pits a stabled herd. And the comparison is exact, for the men speak of them precisely as grooms speak of horses. She steams shy of a full glass. She rides hard at speed, warm her gently, or she sulks. Among them move the night men with their flare lamps, the fire droppers at the hardest and hottest of all shed work, emptying the day's fires from returned engines, a glare of thrown light as the smoke box opens, a cascade of live coals into the pit, ash everywhere, the men working in silhouette like figures at the mouth of a volcano, the boiler washers with their hoses and rods, the cleaners' boys mostly, 14, 15, at the bottom of the ladder every driver climbed, polishing motion and paintwork by lamplight, learning an engine's anatomy with rag and tallow years before they are allowed to touch her regulator. Somewhere the night foreman with his roster board, allotting engines to morning turns like a master of hounds drawing his pack. The express passes all this in 6 seconds of thrown light and is gone, but your own engine came from such a place this evening, warmed and oiled and chosen off just such a board, and will sleep in one tomorrow. The sheds are the night nursery of everything that moves on these rails, and long after this era ends, when the last of these engines stands cold in a museum, old men will pay their shilling at the door, mostly to lean near the boiler and smell that smell again. Past Lancaster, past Carnforth, the country begins to stand up. You feel it before any map could tell you. The rhythm of the rails slows by degrees. The engine's voice, so long an easy murmur, deepens back into those separated working syllables. Ha, ha, ha. And the whole train leans subtly back on itself, like a walker settling his pack for a hill. This is the beginning of the long climb to Shap, the high pass over the Westmoreland fells, and it is the most honest work the engine will do all night. For nearly 20 miles the line goes up through Oxenholme, through the valley at Greyrig, up the winding gorge of the River Lune, where the fells crowd in close and black on either side, and then out onto the open climb, 4 miles at a gradient that railwaymen speak of with respect, to the summit more than 900 feet above the sea. On the footplate, the fireman is earning his rest now, swinging coal in a steady, heavy rhythm, the fire roaring white, the exhaust hammering at the sky, slow and enormous. On a still night you can hear a climbing express from the fellside farms for half an hour, a far-off iron heartbeat, labouring and unhurried, and shepherds in those farms, waking to it, can tell you by ear whether she is on time. Some heavy trains take a helper here, a banking engine kept in steam at the foot of the incline, whose whole employment is to buffer up behind and push shoulder to the summit, then drop away and coast home for the next one. Our express, well loaded but well engined, makes the climb alone tonight, at a dignified walking pace and a half, and there is something in a train breasting a summit that even the oldest railwaymen still lift their eyes for. The beat quickens by 1 degree, then another. The summit board goes by, ghost white at the line side, and the engine all at once falls quiet, steam eased, labour done, and the express passes over the top of its night. The fells up here are empty in a way lowland country never is, peat and stone and wind, a single farm lamp burning miles off on a black shoulder of hill, the half-moon riding clear of the fog country you have left below. And down the long northern slope, the train now runs easy, brakes just feathering, rhythm swelling back to full stride, dropping mile after mile toward the lights of the Eden Valley, scattered small and warm below like coals raked out of a grate. The hardest ground is behind. In your berth you have perhaps surfaced once, felt the labour in the carriage's bones without a name for it, and gone under again, and the summit passed beneath you like a wave under a sleeping swimmer. Carlisle at 2:30 in the morning is the great border toll house of the railway night. 7 companies' rails meet here under the long roof of Citadel Station, and by day the platforms are a squabble of connections. At this hour the station stands nearly empty, gas lamps hissing gently over bare stone, and the night expresses come through one by one, pausing like ships taking on a pilot. For our train the stop is brief and ceremonial. Engines are exchanged once more, the Crewe engine unhooked, bound for the sheds and her rest. A Scottish engine backing down in her place, and with the engine comes a Scottish crew, men whose road knowledge begins here and runs north over the hills to Glasgow and beyond. The southern men hand over the engine, and the word steaming well. Fog gone, clear road grand, says the new driver, in a different music of speech, and that is the whole of the border ceremony. No flags, no gates, just workmen trading a kingdom's worth of trust in 4 words on a lamplit platform. Then out over the River Eden, and within minutes the express crosses the border itself, a small river, a stone marker unreadable in the dark, and is in Scotland, and begins almost at once to climb again, for the road north out of the border country goes up over the moors at Beatock, a long 10-mile pull that is Shap's Scottish cousin. This time a banking engine does come, She is kept waiting at the foot, hot and ready, this being her entire nightly purpose, and buffers up softly behind the train and pushes. If you surface at all on the climb, you may feel the strange doubled heartbeat of it. The road engines beat ahead, the bankers beat behind, syncopated, two iron hearts working either end of your bed. At the summit, the banker eases off, drops back, and coasts down alone to her siding to wait for the next train, needing a shoulder, one more member of tonight's cast, whose whole role is 20 pushing minutes in the dark. And now the express is running down through the southern uplands, with the night's spine truly broken through sleeping Moffatdale, past shepherds' cottages and the black shapes of plantations, down toward the Clyde Valley, where the water runs the same direction as the train, both of them bound north and downhill together. The stars are out here, cold and complete. In the little glass boxes along the way, Scottish signalmen now, with the same levers and the same bells and the same ticking stoves, take up the long relay's final miles. The night is past its deepest point. Far ahead, though nothing shows yet, the sky has begun the first paperwork of morning. Back in the sleeping car, the attendant has poured the night's third mug of tea and permitted himself the underlining of his profession, the quiet review of who, exactly, he is carrying tonight. He keeps no actual notebook. Company rules and personal discretion both forbid it, but 20 years of night trains have given him a memory like a well-run ledger. And in the ledger of tonight, there are entries worth turning over. Berth 4, the October widow. Her husband was an engineer on the Highland section. She goes north each autumn to see to his grave, and her sister, in that order, as she states it, though the attendant privately believes the order is reversed. She tips the same shilling she tipped in '89. Berth 7, the snoring gentleman, a wool merchant of Bradford who boards angry about something in the evening papers every trip and is asleep in 11 minutes. Every trip, the night train being, in the attendant's long observation, a better cure for opinions than any spa. Berths 10 and 11, the honeymooners, bound for a lodge on a loch neither can yet pronounce. Berth 2, a surgeon of Edinburgh, returning from a London consultation he will not speak of, whose light burned late, and who asked, unusually, to be woken before the border. Some men like to be awake when they cross into their own country. The attendant has noted it, and will knock softly at Carlisle, and berth 9 is the entry he will remember longest from tonight. A small girl, perhaps 8, travelling with her grandmother, going north for reasons the tickets do not state, and the attendant does not ask. She boarded solemn and wide-eyed, holding a wooden horse. An hour out of Euston, her head appeared at the door of berth 9 like a small moon rising, and she asked him with the gravity of her age whether the train had a name. He said it had a number, and that the men called the down night express other things, but that if she liked, she might name it herself. She considered this with enormous care, and said the train's name was Bess, after a horse she knew, because it was big and dark and going fast and kind. Then she went back to bed satisfied, and has slept ever since. The attendant sips his tea. Bess, he thinks, listening to the 4 count in the rails, the carriage timbers creaking their old slow sentences. As good a name as any, and better than most. He has carried judges and generals, a duchess with a diamond case she handcuffed to the berth rail, a poet now famous who lay awake all night with the blind up, watching the dark go by, and left the most generous tip of the attendant's career with a note saying he had seen everything he needed. Thousands of sleepers, year on year, each behind a numbered door, each with somewhere they needed to be and a night in between, and all of them, prince and clerk and solemn child, equal citizens of the same swaying corridor, breathing in the dark to the same iron rhythm carried by Bess. He rises for the 2 o'clock round. Door handles, blinds, the lamp by the washroom, all quiet, all well. The best entries in the ledger night after night are the ones where nothing at all is written. There is one more member of the crew to introduce, and it is not a man at all. It rides in every pocket on the train, and everything that has happened tonight, every engine change, every signal rung ahead, every trough and summit met on time, has obeyed it. It is the timetable, and it is worth a quiet chapter of admiration. The public knows the timetable as Bradshaw, the thick yellow monthly guide, dense as scripture and nearly as argued over, in which every passenger train in Britain stands printed in columns, and from which the era's travellers conjure their journeys, planning connections in distant counties with a confidence no previous century could have imagined. Great novelists of the day construct their plots out of Bradshaw. Detectives in the magazines break alibis with it, and it is a standing joke that no man alive fully understands its footnotes, a joke the compilers rather encourage, footnotes being their art form. But behind the public book stands the working timetable, the railway's own private edition, and this is the true instrument of the night. In it, our express is laid out minute by minute across 400 miles, passing times at junctions the public book never mentions, the exact platform at Crewe, the minutes allowed for engine changes, the paths threaded between the mails and the fish and the sleeping car trains of rival companies. Composing it is the winter work of specialist clerks, men with the whole map of Britain in their heads, who fit several thousand daily trains together like the gears of one national clock, leaving a margin here for a bank engine, a margin there for fog, and who regard a clean junction expresses crossing paths 5 minutes apart, night after night, never meeting as other men regard a well-played chess ending. And the timetable is why, at any moment tonight, an astonishing number of people know exactly where you are. The signalman expecting you at the appointed minute, the Crewe foreman with your fresh engine standing ready, the fogman called out for your district, the postal clerks working toward the exchange point they will reach mid-sentence, the station master at the far northern terminus who will step onto his platform at the right moment tomorrow morning as he has for 11 years. None of them is guessing. All of them are reading the same page of the same book, on which your train, and so tonight your bed is a line of figures moving north, foreseen, provided for, expected everywhere. There are travellers of a romantic turn who complain that the timetable has taken the adventure out of journeys. Let them have their adventures. To lie warm in a moving bed, adventureless, at the still centre of a kingdom-wide apparatus of foresight, every mile of your sleep planned last winter by careful men with sharp pencils, that is the deeper luxury, and tonight it is all yours. It would be easy to imagine, from the hush of berth 9, that the night line belongs to our express alone. The truth is grander. The railway at night is a whole moving economy, and the sleeper threads through it like a lady in evening dress crossing a working harbour. Listen, and you can hear the others pass. Every so often through the small hours there comes a sudden pressure on the carriage, a whump of air, a roar rising and falling through perhaps 8 seconds, the windows shivering once, and that is an up train going by on the other road, London bound, at a combined passing speed of 120 miles an hour and a distance of a few feet. It might be our own train's mirror image, the up sleeper, with its own attendant at his lamp, its own solemn children, its own snoring merchants, the two night worlds sliding past each other too fast for any window to meet any window. The two drivers exchange one short whistle note, courtesy of the road, gone before the sound has finished arriving. More often the passing shape is slower, longer, and it clanks. The night goods. These are the trains nobody writes poems about, and everything depends on 40, 60 wagons of coal and iron and timber and beer barrels and Manchester cloth, rumbling north and south at half-hour speed, their couplings singing chain music, a single dim lamp on the brake van at the tail, where the goods guard rides alone with his stove and his ledger, braking by hand on the hills. The goods trains run at night because the expresses own the day. They wait in loops, sidings cut beside the main line while the fast trains pass, then clank out and onward. From your berth, a waiting goods train is a long black silhouette that flicks past in a second and a half, with one orange window at the end of it. The guard, at his stove, watching your lit corridors go by with, perhaps, the mild philosophical envy of the man in the plain van for the people in the gilded one, though he would not trade. Goodsmen are their own aristocracy and know what the country would eat and burn without them. And past the trains themselves, the night line is peopled at its edges everywhere you care to look. Patelayers' huts with a glow at the seams, where track gangs due out at dawn keep their tools and their kettle. Level crossing keepers in their cottages, gates locked across the sleeping roads, one lamp burning. The telegraph wires alongside the line, ticking their invisible traffic of dots and dashes, company business, press dispatches, a doctor summoned somewhere, the whole singing nervous system of the railway strung on poles beside your bed, water crane pillars standing like sentries at the platform ends, a shunting engine fussing wagons in a moonlit yard, small and busy, its cruise lamps swinging like fireflies. The Victorians are sometimes said to have conquered the night with the gas lamp and the electric light, but the truer conquest is this: they organized the night. They filled it with schedules and signals and men on watch, so that the hours between midnight and dawn, which for all the centuries before were simply an emptiness to be endured behind a locked door, became working, ordered, useful time. You are riding through the proof of it. Every clank and whistle and passing hump out there in the dark is the sound of a civilization refusing to close. In the grey-blue hour before 4, the express does a thing that would seem, if you watched it without explanation, like a conjuring trick performed for nobody. At a junction station in the Scottish lowlands, it divides itself in two. Our train, like most great night expresses, is really several trains wearing one shape. The front portion is bound for Glasgow, the rear including your carriage for Perth and the Highland North. All the way from Euston they have run as one, but here their roads part, and so, on a lamplit platform in the smallest hours, shunters move in with hand lamps, and the train is uncoupled at the appointed joint. The Glasgow engine draws its portion away into the dark, lit corridors dwindling westward. A fresh engine, smaller, hill-bred, a Highland engine with tall driving wheels and a homely chimney backs onto what remains, and couples up with that same soft iron handshake you have felt, without waking, 3 times tonight. There is a pleasing thought to take back down into sleep here. Trains of this era are gathered and scattered across the country like this every night. Portions and through carriages sorted station by station in the dark. A carriage for Aberdeen slipped off one train and knitted into another, a horse box for the Highlands, a saloon for a landowner, so that the network by morning has quietly dealt every vehicle to its destination like a patient hand of cards. The passengers sleep through their own shuffling. You went to bed in a London train, you will wake in a Highland one, and the seam between them was sewn at 4 in the morning by men whose faces you will never see. The Perth portion pulls out shorter now, lighter, the new engine's voice higher and keener than the big southern voices you have slept behind, and swings northeast through the waking lowlands. And the world outside the blind has begun, very faintly, to exist again. Not light yet, the promise of the possibility of light. A farm cart stopped at a crossing, horse's breath showing. The first up workman's train waiting in a bay platform, windows full of pipe smoke and dominoes. Hills to the north printing themselves one shade darker than the sky. In the sleeping car, the attendant fills his kettle for the first morning teas and consults his list of waking times, written in pencil against each berth. He will begin at the back of the carriage and work forward, one soft double knock at a time, a service as carefully rationed as everything else on this railway. No one woken early, no one late. each passenger's night ending exactly where they asked for it to end. But not yet. There is an hour yet. The best hour, the railwaymen say, is this one, the hour when night has done its work and morning hasn't started asking questions. In the grey hour after the train divides, the attendant takes his tea to the corridor's end window, and the sight of the northern hills, mild enough tonight, sleeping under summer stars going pale, turns his memory, as it always does, to winter. Every man who works the Highland road carries winter stories, and since the corridor is quiet and the kettle is hot, we may listen to his. Winter on the High Lines is another service altogether. The snow comes off the moors, not falling but travelling level, streaming, dry as sand, and it does not lie so much as build, packing into the cuttings, until a line that was clear at dusk is a white wall by midnight. Against it the railway keeps a whole second army. The snow fences you will pass at first light, long slatted palisades marching over the moor, stand where 40 years of storms have taught the engineers the drifts prefer to build. Behind the fences the ploughs, from the small pilot plough bolted to an engine's front, good for a fresh fall, up to the great wedge ploughs, taller than a man, that are driven at a deep drift by 2 and 3 engines coupled together, charging in reverse gear of nothing backing off, charging again, bursting the snow out to either side in slow white explosions, while the platelayers stand by with shovels for what the plough cannot burst. He was snowed up once, the attendant, the winter of '92, on this very run, in a cutting north of the summit. The train ran into a drift the plough had not yet reached, and stopped, gently and completely, like a hand laid on the chest. And what he remembers is not alarm, but the great strangeness of the quiet. The rhythm gone, the wind over the cutting top the only sound, snow at the windows to the waist rail, the lamps burning steady in a carriage that had become, in 1 minute, a lit house in a white field. The passengers took it wonderfully. The era expects inconvenience and rather enjoys rising to it. The dining car served everyone, berth and third class alike, cocoa and then breakfast on the company. The guard walked back with his lamp and detonators to protect the rear, as the rule book requires even at the end of the world. The wires hummed the news from the nearest box, and by morning a relief engine and the big plough came down from the summit with 50 shovels riding on the tender, and dug, and the train finished its journey, 9 hours late, to a small cheer from all aboard. No trains will be snowed up tonight, but the fences stand out there in the dark all summer, patient, and the ploughs wait in their sidings, greased against the autumn, because this railway plans for winter in June, which is the whole cast of its mind. The attendant rinses his mug. Through the window the hills go by, soft and harmless, wearing their brief green disguise, and he regards them as an old opponent between rounds, with respect and without the least illusion, and with something not far from love. North of Perth, the railway stops pretending to be in a hurry, and the country decides what a train may do. The Highland Road is a different creature from the great 4-track raceway you left at Euston, a single line, much of it winding up the valley of the Tay and then the Garry, crossing and recrossing peat-brown rivers on lattice bridges, curling around the shoulders of hills, because tunnelling through them was beyond any budget the far north could raise. On a single line, trains going opposite ways must meet only at stations, where a loop of double track lets them pass, and this is arranged by one of the loveliest of all railway rituals, the token. At each station the signalman hands the driver a metal token in a leather pouch, hooped for catching at speed, and that token is the physical key to the next section of line. Only one token exists for each section at a time. Hold it and the road is yours alone, by iron guarantee. No train can be facing you, because its driver would have to be holding the very object that is riding on your engine. It is the block system made touchable trust, cast in brass, and at each passing place the exchange is made at a slow roll, arm out from the cab, pouch caught and pouch surrendered in one swinging moment, like a relay of runners who have been passing this baton north since the line was built. The stations up here are small and stone-built and few, with names that sound like weather, and at this hour they are lit and staffed all the same. A lamp on the platform, a station master's window glowing, perhaps a milk churn or two standing sentry for the first up train. Some serve villages you can see, some serve glens where you can see nothing at all, and the platform lamp burns for 3 farms and a shooting lodge somewhere off in the dark. The train calls at almost nothing tonight, but it whistles softly at the appointed places, and here and there a dog answers. Far off, the 2 sounds crossing in the emptiness. And the emptiness is the point now. The blind in your berth has gone grey-gold at its edges, and if you were to lift one corner, some passengers do in this hour, and count it among the sights of their lives, you would see the Highlands assembling themselves out of the last of the night. Black masses becoming hills, hills acquiring heather, a river running beside the train like a companion, smoking with dawn mist. Deer graze close to the line in this hour and barely trouble to lift their heads. A stag standing in bracken watches the carriages pass with antlers held level, unimpressed, older in his manner than anything else the train has passed since London. Sheep own the embankments. Somewhere a keeper's cottage sends up the first wood smoke of the day, straight as a pencil line in the still air. The engine takes the long climb toward the high pass at a working murmur, unhurried. The fireman feeding her little and often, and the sound comes back off the hillsides now the country is close enough to echo. Higher, the trees give out. The line runs through moor with snow fences standing guard for a winter that is months away, past the lonely summit box where a signalman keeps the highest watch on the whole route, his lamp the only light in a bowl of hills. Then over the top, gently, and the long descent begins toward the firthlands and the morning, and the rhythm you have slept inside all night begins, mile by easy mile, to slow toward its ending. The attendant's double knock goes down the corridor at last, soft as everything else he does, berth by berth, each at its written hour, each with the same words, warmed by 20 years of use. Good morning, half an hour to your station, tea directly, and the sleeping car wakes as gracefully as it slept. Blinds go up on full Highland morning, sun not risen but the sky high and pale and enormous, mist lying in the river meadows in long white shoals, the hills all around standing with the light behind them like an audience on its feet. Tea arrives on small trays, strong and railway brown, with a biscuit in the saucer. The wool merchant drinks his standing in the corridor in his shirt sleeves, viewed with the newspapers entirely forgotten, admiring Scotland like a reasonable man. The little girl from berth 9 has the window seat of the corridor's end bench, wooden horse on her knee, watching for her grandmother's town with the fierce attention of someone determined to see it first. The train runs the last miles down the strath with the particular ease of a journey succeeding, nothing left to climb, nothing left to prove, the engine coasting long stretches with her steam shut off, so quiet you can hear the wheels plain rolling and the river and the first birds. The junction where the line meets the firth, the smell suddenly of salt water through a lowered window, fishing boats at anchor on a tide the colour of pewter, and then the town, slate roofs, a church tower, gulls, the station pilot engine already fussing about the yard, and the platform sliding in alongside with a station master in a braided cap standing exactly where the sleeping car door will stop, because he has done this every morning for 11 years and the driver has never once made him walk. The express stops, and the silence this time is the final one, the rhythm you have lived inside for 400 miles simply completing itself, like a tide reaching its mark. Doors open the length of the train. The night's cargo of sleepers steps down blinking into the bright air, the surgeon met by a coachman, the honeymooners by a gig from the lodge, the widow by her sister, the little girl by a grandfather who swings her up, horse and all, in a single practiced arc. Trunks come out of the van. The mail that raced and flew by net and rope through the darkness goes off in a red cart at a trot, on time to the minute. The attendant stands at his door in his tailored coat, accepting thanks and shillings with identical courtesy, wishing each passenger by name a good morning and a better stay. And behind all of it stands the train, Bess quietly ticking as her metal cools, lamps out now, blinds half down, streaked to the roofline with the dust and salt and fog and more rain of an entire kingdom crossed in the dark. The fresh crew that will take her on is already walking up the platform. The night is fully spent, and everyone it belonged to, the drivers and firemen, the signalmen in their long relay of lamplit boxes, the fogmen at their braziers, the sorters, the tappers, the shunters, the banker's crew dropping back at the summit, the attendant folding his passenger list into his breast pocket. All of them are handing the world back to the day shift now and going home to well-earned beds of their own. And that was the night express, one night of it, one crossing of one dark kingdom in the year 1895. There will be another tonight. That is the deepest comfort in this whole iron story. It was never once, it was every night. Every night at 9, the lamps went up the carriage roofs at Euston. Every night the signal boxes rang their bells up the length of the land, and the fogmen stood their ground when the white came down, and the mail flew into the nets, and the water roared up from the troughs, and some child at a carriage window named the train after a horse. Every night for decades, the whole country quietly agreed to stay awake in shifts, so that the rest of it could sleep in motion. Most of those watchers never knew your name. It made no difference to their watching. The lamp was kept because keeping it was the work, and the work was good, and somebody has always been willing to do good work in the dark. The rails still run north tonight, wherever tonight finds you. Somewhere on them, something is moving carefully through the dark with its lamps lit, watched over the whole way. Let it stand for you. The signals ahead of you are green, your berth is warm, your boots are seen to, and the 4 count of the rails goes on and on beneath everything, patient as a heart. You do not have to listen any longer. The attendant is at his lamp. The night is his job now. Sleep well. The signals are green, all the way north. The attendant turns the lamp down one more ring. Mile after mile, someone is watching the road for you. The train knows the way. You can let go now